education, and real-world knowledge about the voiceover industry. It's the Voiceover Gurus Podcast.
Just accept it and move on. Doesn't matter.
Gotta do. Can you hear me still?
I can hear you.
Okay, good.
And you can hear us. We're good.
We're good. We're rolling.
All right. We're ready to rock and roll. Okay, good. Cool. Welcome back to another episode of the Voiceover Gurus Podcast. Hi, Alyssa. How are you today?
I am well, Linda. How are you?
Doing good. It's a Monday for us. So starting off the week strong, starting off the week fresh with work, which is always exciting. Last Thursday night, do you remember you used to come to the improv classes, Alyssa, years ago? Yeah,
Of course I do.
Right. So I do here at the studio. It is not a class. It's more of a workout. And we had one Thursday night, which was very nice. And, everybody gets a chance to express themselves. And you always hear on all the voiceover podcasts, people talk about how important improv is for performance. And we were lucky enough today to have a gentleman who actually has his own company and everything that focuses on improv from Green Light Improv. Hello to Nathan Mins.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
So this is really cool because you have you do a lot, through your company here. Just tell us about your company a bit.
Yeah. So Greenlight Improv uses improv comedy as a tool to develop entrepreneurship and communication skills. So we are typically not teaching pure improv. There are many groups that are fantastic at doing that. So we use improv purely as a tool. So improv is useful to the extent that it helps us develop entrepreneurship and communication skills. We do that through workshops, keynotes, and coaching. The vast majority are workshops. And that tends to be about 5 to 200 people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it can vary quite a bit. I would say average, though, is like 30 to 50. So that's the gist of the company. It's using improv comedy as a tool to develop those skills.
So are these people, everybody's online when you have like 50 people?
No, actually, the vast majority of our workshops are in person. There are some that are online, but vast majority are in person. And so how it typically works is that someone that has a group will bring us in. So it's uncommon that we have a workshop where someone can just walk in and say, I'd like to learn improv.
Mm-hmm.
So it's usually a manager that signs up.
I was going to say, from my understanding, and this is really, really cool to me from the seat that I sit in, I'm a lifelong actor. And I've always said that, I've encouraged lawyers, doctors, anyone who speaks, a teacher, anyone who speaks, that, improv skills are really, really important because in life, you're in the moment.
Yeah.
And that's where success happens, is in that moment. And so the sense I'm getting is probably you get called in by a lot of corporations that are either looking for tools for sales staff or collaborative, team building within the company or product launching and things like that. So that's really awesome to me. I love that perspective.
Yeah. It's very common. Most common things we get called in for are, my group isn't connected as much as I think they could be. They're not communicating very well. That could be on the listening side or the presenting side. They don't understand the entrepreneurial process, that problem-solving process, or even like you mentioned, we want stronger, more adaptable, confident leaders. And the solution that we use is improv to do that.
What do you use? Like, what's a typical workout like?
Yeah, typical workshop. It typically starts about 10 minutes of a facilitator talking, and the facilitator, the gist of that first 10 minutes is, don't be scared. We have all done this every day of our lives. It's going to be okay. And then we get into about half the time is partner exercises, and about half the time is groups of about 4 to 6. So as an example of an exercise that we do, and this is a very common one, is I say, plan me a birthday party. My birthday's coming up in March, so we have 11 months until my birthday. And all you have to do is plan me a party, but the second person that talks, and every time someone talks after, you start your sentence with yes, but. So you say, hey, let's go to the moon for Nathan's birthday party. And then the next person says, yes, but I'm afraid of space. Yes, but, and you just sort of keep going through it. You do that, they find typically that it's very difficult, but that is typically comfortable as well.
Yeah.
And we do the same thing, but yes, and people find it's very collaborative. And then we talk about how can we use this yes, and mindset in other areas of our life, other than being on stage planning me a birthday party.
That's actually really, really cool. And in the beginning of that, you made such a good point, because even with our actors, the notion of improv, right? Or the notion of just being off the cuff, let's call it, is so scary. But it's like, I'm improving right now.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm going to say as I'm saying it. And you never know what you're going to be saying as you're saying it. And all of life is a response to environment, emotions, and the people that you're with. And it's funny when you put this word improv in front of it, people are like, oh.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there's also that expectation that you have to be funny, and that you have to be like, you're on Whose Line Is It Anyway? Because that's usually everybody's like relation, what they related to. And they go, oh my gosh, I can't do that. I can't get up in front of people and be funny. And I'm like, it's not about being funny, but I think that's where a lot of the fear comes from. They think they're not going to be entertaining in some way. At least that's the feedback I get from people that start off here.
Yeah. And I'll say the vast majority of the time, very often I'm talking to entrepreneurship groups, or even just groups that are working on their communication skills. And what I typically tell them is that the idea that people have in their mind about improv is that people go on stage, they tell jokes, and then people laugh, and it's great. And then when people actually perform improv themselves, they try to use that mental model to perform. And when you do that, a couple things happen. First, you realize that telling jokes is really hard. And that's why we have a whole nother medium called stand-up.
Right.
Making jokes, writing them on the spot is really hard. Once you find that out, that immediately, the second thing you find out is that it's so hard that you did a poor job and that no one laughed. And then not only did no one laugh, everyone is waiting for you to say the next thing. And everyone in the audience has to sit through this uncomfortable silence, knowing that you told a joke, but it didn't land. And so we use this model to describe like the process of anyone starting a new venture, new anything. Is this, we don't go out there and just burn the boats immediately.
Yeah.
We go out, test something out, just like we do on improv on stage. And then we listen to our customers, listen to the market, see what's happening, just like we do in improv, where we're listening for the audience's reaction. And then we keep building on what works. When the audience laughs, we say, oh, that's a button that they like. Maybe we should double down on that. But that iterative process is very different from, I think I want to tell a joke, let me tell it, and I hope it works. I'm putting all my eggs in this basket, and if it doesn't work, I'll be surprised.
It's a good analogy. So I like that analogy a lot. For business, and but beyond business, it's like I can even apply it to our students in that, like, they'll find something that works, some genre, some read, some voice, some character that's working for them. And then they go put all their eggs in that basket. Meanwhile, there's this landscape that's so huge that if they would take the time to be open to more free exploration, like improv provides, they would find just, a vast resource inside themselves to make something even bigger than they believe themselves to be.
Right.
So I like that analogy a lot.
Yeah. And I have a lot of friends too that do a lot of voiceover work, whether they're improvisers or not improvisers. And sometimes they say, maybe I should just quit my job that I've had for 30 years and try to do voiceover. And I think that they expect that it will be very easy to do. And yeah, and I think that's why they think that it is a good move to burn all the boats. But I think that everything that we talked about testing the process, iterating, applies to starting in voiceover as well, where you test it out, see what's working, and keep exploring.
It's a process. Yeah. Anybody listening to this show would know how difficult it is to do voiceover and become an actual successful working voiceover actor as well. Now, you said that you do work with some actors in certain situations?
Sometimes, but I would say the vast majority are non-actors. These are, if there are actors, they tend to be people that happen to be in a workshop with other non-actors.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm doing like a workshop with 50 or 100 hospital executives, and someone used to be in theater.
Oh, gotcha.
Well, there's always the someone that used to be in theater, no matter where you go. I love that person.
Yeah.
Because they're so happy when they get a moment to be back there.
Yeah.
Yeah. We also do like monthly public workshops in Columbus, Ohio. And there quite often there will be people that are actors that just want to do some more coached improv, or very often people that play Dungeons and Dragons that want to do some improv.
We were just talking about that last Thursday, because it turns out that the group of guys, they get together and they do D&D like on a regular basis and talk about how great it is for character form. And funny thing is, all of those people have regular jobs. One's like a geologist, another one works in a school, and they just come to let their hair down. They have zero interest in using it, because I was all like, yeah, I want to get voiceover actors in here, help them grow their talent. It wound up being just regular people, which I think is so cool. Then they just have such a great time. But so now if you're dealing with like 50 executives, 100 executives, what do you do? Like breakout groups, or how does that work? It just seems like a lot of people.
It can be a lot of people. I find a lot of it is designing the experience by designing some of the room. So if we have like a stadium and there are 50 people, the energy just sort of dissipates. If we have a classroom for 50 people, it's hot and sweaty and it's too much. So we want to strike a middle ground there. But yes, it is a lot of breaking out into groups, breaking out into pairs, and then breaking out into those groups of 4 to 6. We have facilitators that are walking around, helping each group, coaching them. And then after they're done with that experience, then we'll come back as a group and talk about how they can apply it to different areas of their life. And we find that it's helpful that they all have individual experiences with the exercise, because they can all say, I took this out of the yes and exercise, planning a birthday party, and I plan to apply it to my marriage. And someone else goes, I did not see that coming. and then the rest of the workshop, it sort of opens their mind to where they can apply this work.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's something that you would not think.
The marriage one is something I heard a couple of days ago, that none of our workshops, at least right now, at the time of this recording, are to help married people communicate with their spouse better.
That's really cool, though. I like that a lot.
But I met with someone and I said, what did you take away from the workshop? And she said, my relationship with my husband is just so much better.
That's
And
amazing.
I was like very confused.
But now I'm curious, how is she applying it?
So she said, she taught her husband the yes and yes but mentality,
Mm-hmm.
and said, I think when I don't feel supported, it is sometimes because you are using this yes but mentality, where yes and yes but will say yes but is typically, yes, I hear you, I understand what you're saying, but I think that there's a problem with it, and you're not honestly considering it. Whereas yes and is more, I respect what you're saying and what this idea you've created, and I'm going to try to find a way to make this idea work. And she felt that her husband would flip into the yes but category with a brand new idea that
Mm-hmm.
she had. And yeah, so she's just been teaching that model that we intend for it to be used at work to her family members, and it's been going really well.
That's awesome. I actually I live for the yes but and the yes and exercises. Because it is, one is so negating and one is so affirming. And yeah, and now you've got my mind spinning on like how to use it inside what I'm doing with actors specifically.
Mm-hmm. Now, the
Because,
yes button, yes and, is it similar to fortunately, unfortunately, that game?
mhm.
So when one person is assigned fortunately, the other person's unfortunately, and you have a scenario, and then you have to.
Yeah, that one puts it in between the two scene mates immediately, whereas yes and yes but, they're like two separate exercises. Yes, but you go through a whole series of yes, but we can't because the dog ate my homework. And then the yes and, you're flipping it and it's yes and then you're affirming something. So it's cool.
That's really great. We do another exercise here. You probably heard of it, Nathan. It's called Ad Game, where you get like a group of people together and they have to create the product. They have to create a commercial for it. They have to have a tagline. They have to have a jingle, and they have to have a spokesperson. And the whole process is collaborative, where no suggestion is ever knocked down. Everything's accepted. So it's like, oh, yes, the product is like, I gave them, I said, oh, I'm thinking about frozen peas. So they created a product from frozen peas. And they, I won't go into it because they got a little dirty with it. But they any idea anybody has? Yes, great idea. And it just builds and builds and builds into this. So I'm not sure if there's something like that you guys do, but
yeah, there are. One thing about all of these improv games is the way I described the plan me a birthday party yes and exercise. There are probably thousands of variations of that exercise. We do a somewhat similar variation to what you called the ad game. And we do it by giving them an adjective and a noun, and then they create a new product, service, initiative, just something new. And then they have to create that together. But in ours, typically everyone talks in the pitch. And we also often will switch out the adjectives throughout the exercise.
Oh,
that's cool.
So it's sort of this lesson on things change. Oftentimes, we have a great idea, we send it out, and because we weren't talking to our customer, to the user, or even just the other person on the other side of what we're communicating with, we didn't listen to them enough. And so sometimes things change, but as a team, you can go past it.
That's great. lesson to learn for actors as well with us, because sometimes you'll study a script and be all ready to go with the voice and the delivery, and then they'll go, surprise, new script, and it's nothing like what you did in the audition, and and suddenly you have to shift. You have to completely shift gears.
Yeah, or even when you're in session and you show up to your session and you really believe that you're bringing the thing that they want, and then they want something entirely different, and having to be able to take that direction right on the spot with all the eyes and ears listening. And that's like the ultimate just letting go. And I think that's what the strength of improv is when you teach people. There's the first level of when you first approach it, you have to let go of yourself. You have to let go of that editor in your head or anything that's even stopping you from participating. Like that's level one of the let go, is just to merely get yourself in that free space. And then when you're inside of the experiences, then it's like a layer of let go upon layer of let go. And it's awesome.
Yeah, I think that a lot of this comes back to being more comfortable with the prospect of failure. Because I think that whenever I have gotten notes, largely before my improv training and doing a lot of Greenlight Improv work, I would find that when I got notes as an actor that were the camera's rolling, we have 12 people staring at you, but we want you to do this entirely different. I was nervous because I was afraid that I was going to mess up with everyone watching me, and that would ruin my career.
It's over.
Yeah, it's over. If I miss that one word, it's over. Whole thing. Yeah, but I think that there's something to improv to say that when you're on stage, you're in a quote high stakes scenario with hundreds of eyeballs staring at you. And you have no idea what you're going to say next. But it's the practice of figuring out how to save yourself and save the team on a consistent basis that happens dozens of times through an improv show that I find is very helpful when I'm acting outside of improv or in a business context too.
So being comfortable with failure and being okay with it and knowing that you can just bounce back.
Yeah, trusting yourself that you have the skills to do it.
Right. And that means you need confidence.
Yeah, and it's like, it's like also like keeping the boat buoyant while it's actually sinking.
Yeah.
Like the boat is sinking. We're not denying that, but we're just going to keep bailing out continuously and change it while it's actually sinking. And again, so applicable to what voice actors need, like in terms of just that opening up. I have found in working with various types of actors that the voice actors tend to be the most cerebral. And I think that's because there's just this immediate connection between the brain and the voice. And like in general, when you're sitting at this mic and you're not using your whole body, your whole instrument, all of your vessel, like it can just stay here all day. The loop can just be continuous, brain, mouth, brain, mouth, brain, mouth, brain, mouth. So it just lends itself to be more cerebral and like getting to this point where you're constantly editing yourself, because it's like a loop. You're hearing it, you think about it. You're hearing it, you think about it.
It's a great point.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
voiceover actors should make sure they're standing up.
Oh, I highly recommend that. I guess unless you're doing an audiobook or you're doing something that's long form narration, stand, let the body flow.
Let the body flow.
I can't imagine. I mean, people will say all the time for monologues or for improv, like, yeah, there's a chair, but you probably shouldn't sit in it like at right now. If that's a question, like, I don't know if I should sit. Maybe we can use the energy and stay standing for a bit. Yeah, I find I find that very interesting. Yeah.
How did you get to the point of, because you were an actor, you're still an actor, I assume you still do some
Yeah.
performances. I mean, how did you get to the point where you decided to have this business that focused and helped out large groups of normal people?
Yeah. So I saw my first improv show in 2016. And once I saw that show, I knew improv was something I wanted to do myself. I think it was that I saw that it seemed that they were all operating as one brain on a stage, and no one knew what was going to happen next. So that was very exciting to me. So I went out to audition about a week or two later, and I did so well. I was laughing, they were laughing. Honestly, I was like, I'm blowing everyone out of the water. I'm so good. And so later that night, I get the call that, of course, is the congratulations, you're in the group call. And it seems that I was the only person that thought I did well. So, so I didn't get in. I didn't get into those groups.
Oh,
So I took a step back and I was like, this is something I want to do. How can I do it? So I started getting training. And mind you, at this point, I would say the majority of the people in these groups, they weren't trained improvisers. They haven't taken their long classes. They happened to stumble into it and they were really good at it.
mm.
So now me coming back to this audition, now a trained improviser, I was like, this is incredible. Now I'm the trained one. So I auditioned again. Exact same thing happens. Training did not pay off, at least in that one moment. But I kept training, kept getting more work in, and just doing the improv work. And after 7 auditions, I got in.
Wow. We're
So
gonna give you.
I know. Everyone hear that? Listeners, you hear that? 7 auditions.
yeah.
And you kept at it.
So after those 7 auditions, I realized, okay, improv's a learnable skill. And I learned that because I realized that it wasn't their fault that I didn't get into the improv groups the first 6 times. I just wasn't good enough. I didn't deserve to be in there because I couldn't perform at that level of improv yet. But through the training, it's something that I can develop. And I believe anyone can develop that skill. And then the other thing that I realized is that as I improved on stage, I improved off stage as well. So as I became a better improviser, I became a better communicator, better entrepreneur, and a better team member. And that was really the birth of Greenlight Improv. Realizing that it's learnable and that it has an effect on these other skills. And that it wasn't just me. There's been studies on improv's effect on these things. And my friends were experiencing the same thing. So then I started the company in 2019. So about 3 years after initially discovering improv.
Wow. That's great.
Cool.
I just find that fascinating. It's what a great business concept.
Yeah, it is nice to share that story in the workshops, because it just shares that, like, yeah, in a lot of these kinds of, we'll call them like low barrier of entry kind of things, like a lot of people assume that they can do voiceover because they have a microphone on their phone. And a lot of people think that they can start a business because they have an internet connection. And you can get started in both of those areas,
Right.
very simply. But it may take a couple rejections and a decent amount of work to be able to stand out in the marketplace when there are so many people
Doing the same thing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Totally.
Absolutely. And you put that key in on your own training, and obviously Linda and I are going to speak to our students about training, but it's really not from the perspective of the business as much as the perspective of our own experience. I mean, the number of classes, I didn't even go, I went to conservatory schools. And then after I finished conservatory schools, I went to every single training you could go to, weekend long. It never stopped.
Yeah.
It should never stop.
Yeah. Important to continue,
because while you're, when you get comfortable in anything, somebody's behind you learning more.
That's scary, Alyssa.
But it's true. Or it's like in business, somebody's inventing the next thing. Yes, it's the same foundation of an idea, but they've moved on to the next, and you're just sitting in what's working.
Right.
You have to be ready for the pivot.
Push yourself. So Nathan, you're in Columbus?
That's true. Yes.
Okay. Ben, and the majority of the stuff you do, like you said, you don't do much online. It's mostly in person.
Yeah, there's some online, but most of them are in person. We travel, but traveling out from Columbus. Yeah.
Gotcha. I'm trying to push people into your direction. At least I can check out your website.
There's a lot of people in Ohio.
Yeah, that's right. We do.
I feel like, in our round robins of where you're from, Ohio is a frequent state.
That's true. So greenlightimprov.com, if you're in the Columbus area or willing to drive to Columbus, you can connect with Nathan and be a part of something spectacular.
Yeah. Or if you want to fly us out or have us drive out. Yeah. Columbus is actually the one of the points in the country that it's easiest to get to. I think it's 80% of the population in like a day's drive, something like that. Don't quote me on that.
What?
But no, because there's so many people on the East Coast, and you can drive, like we could drive to Atlanta in one day, New York, Chicago.
Yeah.
We get pretty much the eastern half.
It's a hub.
Yeah.
It's a hub.
Well, this is great. I love what you're doing here. I'm fascinated, but it makes sense. 5 to 200 participants. I have some ex-voiceover students that went back to their regular jobs because they decided to want to do voiceover. And sometimes they'll say to me, and I've done it on a few occasions, can you come down to my office and do improv for about 20 of us? And it's for me, it's uncomfortable because they don't have a place for it. So we wind up doing it amongst desks, and trying to carve out a little spot to be a little stage. They have a good time with it, but it is difficult from a facilitator's perspective, which is why I don't do it very often. And I can imagine for you, the logistics is something that, is first and foremost.
Yeah, it is. I very rarely have an ideal workshop situation where the room is set up perfectly to how we would like it. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the time we're doing university things. And when we do university work, there are very often times we're in a lecture hall. And lecture halls, the chairs don't move.
Right.
So, yeah, we sort of sprawl out among the chairs in a lot of office buildings, too. Sometimes they have a makeshift event space, maybe common area that they can move some tables. But yeah, it is very commonly in areas with not ideal settings, but we improvise.
Hey, dun-dun-dun.
Look at that.
Well, I love it. This was so informative. Thank you, Nathan, for joining us today.
Yeah,
of course.
Truly. I'm very inspired.
Yeah. I want to get people to do improv, more improv, help you let go and perform at your peak.
Get out of those heads. Get out of those heads.
Yeah, totally. But your website again is greenlightimprov.com. You should check it out because who knows, maybe you'll be in the Ohio area and say, I want to go visit Nathan and participate, right?
That'd be awesome.
Well, thank you again. That wraps up another episode of the Voiceover Gurus podcast. And just head over to the website, voiceover.guru, for all the info on how to coach with us. And thanks for listening. Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Voiceover Gurus podcast. Real talk about the voiceover industry. Learn more about us and get coaching at voiceover.guru.